Hello, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Press X Video Game Chit Chat. And this week, I'm going to swerve you a little bit here. I mean, the title of this video does give it away, but when the art and video game conversation comes up so many times, it's the conversation of, are video games art? Let's ponder pretentiously for 30 minutes.
Well, see, this is where I run into a problem. Video games, see, art by its nature is a very singular pastime. It's a very singular, what's the word? It's a very singular activity, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to say that, and that's not what we're talking about today. Instead, we're going to swerve it and talk about games that use art as a gameplay mechanic.
Well, yeah, there's those. See, what I was going to say was art is a very singular activity, and so you can have an artist or a group of artists collaborating with each other, but video games are something that it requires a group of technicians and programmers and people like that. Do you see what I mean?
There's a lot of debate about what is art, what is an artist, and frankly, I have no interest in ever talking about that because it's already been talked about to death by people way more boring than us.
Yeah, I was just going to say make the point that the reason why we're not talking about that, one of the reasons why, anyway, is because you could have all of the pretty graphics that you want, but it's still generic third-person action-adventure.
You've really got a problem with that sort of game, haven't you?
It's part of the open world fatigue that we were talking about a few shows ago. I'm kind of tired of them. And you could give it the thing is, you could give it all the nice backgrounds and all the artsy-fartsy, stylistic things that you want, but the game is still the same as generic game A over here, or generic first-person shooter over here. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Future Rob is going to be very clever and put Akami in here, and this means we're not having a go at Akami. Akami is great. Akami is the exception.
Yeah,
so, anyhow.
See, Akami had an interesting angle to it, but that's not what got us started on this. Concrete Genie is what got us started.
I mean, Concrete Genie. I think it was announced that last year's E3 2018. I can't remember where it was announced. It's not important anyway. It's PlayStation 4 indie. That's why it's coming through. Like, it is the primary platform there.
Yeah.
And in it, you play a young lad who's having a hard time of things. He's bullied. Life ain't great for him. And he discovers he has this ability to basically make graffiti monsters come to life and affect the world and have powers in it. So I know many people, many fuddy-duddies maybe, they'll say that graffiti isn't art, but it is when it's done right.
Yeah.
So that's what sort of opened up this conversation of games that use art as a mechanic. Because when you sit down and you look at it and you consider it, I mean, Akami is a game where you use art as a mechanic. You are using a very traditional I mean, you don't use it, but it's what's happening on screen is basically a interpretation of somebody using that sort of traditional Japanese calligraphy.
Yeah.
And you put like a circle through something, you put a swoosh through something, you do something to something. It's art.
Yeah. I mean, by the same token, they kind of followed up Okami. Well, not followed up Okami in the literal sense, but they were inspired by the way Okami played when they released Epic Mickey 1 and 2, which is basically Mickey Mouse with a paintbrush. But I will say one thing, because you've mentioned Okami, and I just want to say, just from the trailer of Concrete Genie, there was one game that immediately sprung to mind, more so than Okami, when I saw the trailer. Jet Set Radio.
Would you include... well, yeah, I mean, I've described it, and totally there. That is what it is, isn't it? I mean...
Yeah.
It's one of the things we're going to do with Press X going forward is this thing called the Dead Franchise series, so we'll talk about that more in that, I think.
Yeah, but I think Jet Set Radio would make an interesting pairing with Concrete Genie, and make an interesting pairing with Okami as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's art, is it style? It's street style, it's street art, and yeah, it's amazing that I never considered that, because I loved the first one, absolutely adored it.
What, Jet Set Radio?
Yeah, if it was Jet Set Future was the sequel, wasn't it?
No, Jet Set Radio Future was basically just a revamped version of Jet Set Radio for the Xbox.
Yeah, right, yeah. But it's graffiti. You go around graffitiing something. In that, it's much more... So it's not art graffiti, it's tagging. if we're going to be honest. It's just writing your name or putting your tag on obscure places.
Yeah, but I mean, when you get right down to it, art is a very...
Oh, please don't make it this episode where we define what art is.
No, I'm not. We're not defining art. What I'm saying is art is subjective, you know. I considered Jet Set Radio an artistic game in a complete sense. Just the whole package.
It is, but it's artistic game. It's just I'm being very anal about it.
Yeah, I know. But then the weird thing is, the Dreamcast had some interesting games that kind of fell into that category where they were artistic. They played with various perceptions of what art actually is. So you had Rez, for example.
Rez was just LSD nightmare, though, wasn't it?
Well, no, because it was and it wasn't. Because Rez was one of those bizarre games where you saw it and you weren't sure what to make of it, but the inspiration for Rez came from stuff like, came from stuff like Kandinsky's paintings and stuff like that. So there was a lot of artistic inspiration for the game. Yes, right, that was pretentious. But then you had stuff like Space Channel 5, which was as...
Oh, wow, you are stretching that if you include... It's Pretty Alien Dancing Game.
Yeah, before Pretty Alien Dancing Game was a thing.
Is it a thing?
I don't know.
I don't know. Lola or something. It's been such a long time since I've even thought about Space Channel 5. It was like a pink-haired alien called Lola who just danced on a space station.
See, the weird thing is, those games were produced by Tetsuya Mizuguchi, right? Who went on to do stuff like Child of Eden later on. But he was also, I think, the producer for Lumines and games like that. And so you have this kind of sub-branch of video gaming that is very esoteric, I suppose you'd say. It doesn't look at games in the way that everyone else does. I mean, that game company kind of falls into that category as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I know they're called that game company, but I don't really think of them as games. They're more like, this is going to sound like the most pretentious thing that I've ever said in my life, but I'm going to commit to it and go for it. But ambient experiences. But it's not about sort of the gameplay loop. It's about experiencing the world. There's no real conflict in it. It's just experiencing the world. So I don't think I could really call them art.
Yeah, well, I mean...
artistic.
They were artistic. And that's what I mean when... It's difficult for us to... and we're not even going to make the attempt at defining what art is, as we've already said. It's very subjective, but you can see the artistic flourishes in games. And by that, I don't mean games that have, like, really, really high-end graphics, like your Call of Duties or your Uncharted 4s or all of those, top-end games, all those AAA games with loads of budget for developing really quality high-end graphics.
Okay.
I'm talking about games...
Really current touchdowns there, Rob. Really current.
You understand what I mean, okay? I'm talking about games like Journey, for example, which was very stylistic, very simple. Flower and Floor were more experiences. Journey was a lot more like a game, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Floor, I don't know what... I mean, I played Floor. You just go from level to level, eating bits and becoming more and more of a fish.
Yeah. But I mean...
Sort of fish, sort of amoeba thing.
Yeah. And then you had games that spun off on that, like Koi, which I think you played, didn't you?
Yeah, it was like a Chinese game. It got wailed on in reviews, but I liked it. It was that sort of just pleasant chewing gum for the brain, and I know that as a phrase is really looked down upon, but sometimes you just don't want to play a game which has conflict. Sometimes you just want nice.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, we also saw the rise of the other type of artistic game called the walking simulator.
Yeah, I don't think that really includes in here, though, does it? I mean, that's an episode entirely of its own, the walking simulator.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention them because games like Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture and Gone Home and stuff like that, which are dyed-in-the-wall walking simulators, they have really good graphics, but not much in the way of gameplay. They're more experiences, as we've said.
Yeah, looping it round to sort of gameplay methods. I don't know whether you want to call stickers art, but I'm going to call stickers art because don't stifle me, damn it.
No, stickers are art in the same way that graffiti is art.
Well, yeah. It's a game which has almost immediately been forgotten about, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was actually one of the PlayStation 3 indie games that I loved the most. It was called Stick It to the Man.
I knew you were going to say that.
It took me ages to remember this. I remembered the song that played over the credits. I remembered what they did after it, like Zombie Vikings. What's that game? What is it? And it came to me eventually. But in it, you play a guy who's basically attacked by a alien brain monster thing, which gives you the power to have like a giant hand that people can't see, but you can, coming out your head.
Yeah.
And how you affect people is you put stickers on them to change their state of mind, or like item from the world, you put on another item and it changes what it does. It's very sort of puzzly, platformy, psycho-Nazi, clicky, whatever.
Yeah, Sticker to the Man was one of those unusual ones where it relied on stickers. It's kind of similar to, you remember Zelda Majora's Mask?
And before that, I mean, the more obvious jumping off point, we can look back around to Majora's Mask, but from stickers, I think the only real jumping off point of that is LittleBigPlanet.
Yes, well, yeah. I mean, LittleBigPlanet was as... here's a question, right? Is it fair to call them artistic, or is it more fair to call them creative?
I'd say it's possibly the ultimate sandbox game.
Yeah, do you see what I mean?
Because you are given... Basically, when you do, like, I mean, I know it's kind of passed out of popular culture now, but at the time, like, when the first LittleBigPlanet came out, it was like one of the hottest games around.
Yeah, and
absolutely amazing.
They didn't just do one game; they did 3 games, and it was on literally every format. You had different variations of that game. You had toys and little, how-to books, and the internet was just filled with levels from LittleBigPlanet, from people just creating their own levels.
Yeah, this was way before Mario Maker as well.
Yeah, long before Mario Maker. And I mean, we're talking about level design, which is a very niche thing to actually...
It's not just level design. It's not just a matter of here is a level, negotiate. It's actually putting in the aesthetics of it.
That's what I mean by level design. It's such a niche thing. Even in video game development, level design is really, really niche. It's a very, very specialized skill set. Not everybody can design a level. Do you see what I mean? And yet, because of one game, you had tens of thousands of people across the planet designing their own levels and uploading them.
Yeah, they were actually better than the ones that the developers had made. Some of them were outstanding.
Yeah, and that lasted for 3 games. I think the bubble didn't burst.
I'd say 2. Number 3 didn't really have the same sort of
impact,
power as the other 2.
It didn't, but at least you could still use levels that were developed using the first 2 games. I think 2 was the high point, though. Yeah,
it was. I mean, what's Dreams? That's their next game, isn't it? What is Dreams?
When I go to sleep and close my eyes and see weird things.
Here we go. It's the absolute apex of that idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pure expressing yourself using art within a video game.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a level. Apparently you can make short films in it, which is incredible. Because the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because, it can be cute. Yeah, you can put stickers on things. Yeah, you can draw graffiti at one end of the spectrum. But at the other end of the spectrum, it's kind of invented its own genre.
Yeah.
And inventing genres is a very, very hard thing to do. I mean, after a medium like video games, movies, whatever's been around for a certain amount of time, the order is kind of established, isn't it?
Yeah.
For these creator games, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, it takes a lot to actually create a new genre in gaming, even a new subgenre in gaming. There aren't many games that you can name of recent times that have managed to do something like that.
Oh, I forgot to mention Scribblenauts in this, but it's incredible. I mean, this is a great ending point. Just creator games have created a new genre.
Yeah, creator games have created a new genre. I mean, I think one of the things that one of the games that I did want to mention, because you did mention Scribblenauts. There was a game that played with art in a way that I'd never seen before, and I don't think you had either.
Go on.
The Unfinished Swan.
Yeah, that was a weird one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like you were designing a level, but it was already designed. It's just you had paint, you threw paint. The world revealed itself.
Yeah. It's weird because there was an RPG. I don't know if you remember this, because music is also an art form. Yeah?
Of course it is, yeah.
And I know we haven't really talked about rhythm action games, but we kind of touched on them when we talked about Rez and Child of Eden, right? But one of the games that I did want to mention was Eternal Sonata.
I do remember that, yeah.
Which, on the surface, looks like your typical JRPG, but once you start playing it, it really isn't.
It was about Chopin, wasn't it?
Basically, you are running through the dreams of Chopin, who is dying of tuberculosis.
Cheery note to end on there, Rob.
But the thing is, it's a fictional world that's dreamed by Chopin during his last hours, and the setting is unusual. The actual battle system centers on music rather than anything else. So you're fighting with music. How weird is that?
It was in one of those early PlayStation 3 RPGs, which was just forgotten about, totally.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it was such an unusual idea. And I'd love to see more games where, like the Unfinished Swan and Eternal Sonata, where they use the actual artistic mechanic, the actual art mechanic, as something that's intrinsic in playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's all those games that you get where it's sort of playing to the beat, like Crypt of the Necro Dancer, and that there's all the one that I can't remember the name of, which is basically using the same engine recently.
Elite Beat Agents, and there's all the others, the rhythm action games.
But that's where it stops becoming art as a mechanic and starts becoming stops being art as a mechanic and starts becoming rhythm action.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll be coming to that in a future episode, but I think that's it for this week. If you have anything to add to the conversation, please do comments below, click like and subscribe, or smash the hell out of it, because that's what you're supposed to say on YouTube. Just devastate the thing until your mouse is put dust on the table. That's what you're supposed to do with YouTube, right? So do all that, and thanks for watching.